WEF demands global ban on homegrown food to meet net zero. Well, we know what this is really about. This has absolutely nothing to do with the climate. This has everything to do with globalists trying to control people. They don't want you self-sufficient. They want you to be able to have to depend on them for things, depend on them for food. They want to kill the food supply, so you eating this artificial meat and artificial foods that they create so they can make more money. It's about control. It has absolutely nothing to do with the environment. So we're going to talk about it. But before we get started, go ahead and hit that like button. Share this out so we can get this information out there. Subscribe if you're not already a subscriber. And hit that alarm bell so you know when I'm putting out new stuff. Also, check out my link tree in the description. Has a link to my Patreon. That's where I talk about things that I can't talk about here. There's also a link to my Instagram and my X account, so follow me there as well. All right. So let's get into this news. Now, this comes from Slay News, and they report that the World Economic Forum is demanding that global governments enforce bans on members of the general public growing food at home in order to supposedly lower emissions. Again, they don't want you self-sufficient. The globalist organization claims that homegrown food contributes to climate change. The WEF argues that banning homegrown food will help governments comply with their targets for meeting net zero by 2030. First off, that's never ever going to happen. That's 5 years away. Second off, it's impossible. We don't have the technology to do it. Again, this has nothing to do with climate or anything like that. They can care less about the climate, because if they did, they wouldn't be jet setting around the world on their private jets. They would be doing something as they would be flying commercial to help save on carbon emissions. So this is how you know they don't really care about the environment. In order to comply with the WEF's net zero targets, government must dramatically reduce, quote, carbon emissions by 2030 and completely eliminate them by 2050. According to so-called experts behind a recent WEF study, researchers apparently discovered that the carbon footprint of homegrown food is destroying the planet. How long have they been saying this? By now, according to them, you can't turn back now. From what they said years ago, they were like, oh, another 10 years, you're not going to be able to do anything. And they keep pushing it back, kicking the can down the road. Oh, another 10 years, you're not going to be able to do anything to fix it. So we got to do something now. We got to take all your taxes now. You got to stop living your way of life now. But we're not going to change. Us globalists aren't going to change at all. We want you guys to change, though. As a result, the WEF and other globalist climate zealots are now demanding that governments intervene and ban individuals from growing their own food in order to save the planet from global warming. Globalists insist that allowing citizens to grow their own food will undermine efforts to meet the goals of the net zero agenda as dictated by the WEF and United Nations. The research indicate that garden to table produce causes a far greater carbon footprint than conventional agriculture practices, such as those on rural farms. This research, conducted by WEF-funded scientists at the University of Michigan, was published in the Journal of Nature Cities. The study looked at different types of urban farms to see how much carbon dioxide or CO2 was produced when growing the food. Again, isn't that what plants need to grow, right? On average, a serving of food made from traditional farms created 0.07 kilograms of CO2. According to the study. However, the WEF-funded researchers claim that the impact on the environment is almost 5 times higher at 0.34 kilograms per portion for individual city gardens. The paper's first author, Jake Howes, said, quote, "The most significant contributor to carbon emissions on the urban agriculture sites we studied was the infrastructure used to grow the food, from raised beds to garden sheds to pathways. These constructions had a lot of carbon invested in their construction." This is crazy, right? The study recruited 73 urban agriculture sites around the world. Those, so they 73 from 73 sites they looked at. They saying like this worse off just by 73. How many urban agriculture sites are there around the world, though? You just picked out 73 randomly? I could poke holes all through this study. But those farms include some in Europe, the United States, and United Kingdom. The researchers say they conducted a comprehensive life cycle assessment on the site's infrastructure, irrigation, and supplies. Howes and his teammates grouped urban agriculture sites into 3 categories: individual or family gardens, including allotments, collective gardens, such as community gardens, and larger commercial-oriented urban farms. The researchers also found other factors they claim are hazardous when it comes to impacting the alleged climate crisis. Poorly managed compost and other synthetic inputs contribute to global warming, they warned. So now compost is bad. Remember when they were pushing for compost? Now they say compost is bad? They need to make up their mind, right? They further advised that fruit was 8.6 times more eco-friendly when grown conventionally compared to in a city. Vegetables, meanwhile, were 5.8 times better for the environment when left to the professionals, they claim. Moreover, 2/3 of the carbon footprint of allotment is created by the garden itself, as per their data. Nevertheless, they insist that people should be limited when it comes to keeping plants inside their homes, as well as growing food in their gardens. So now having plants in your home is bad. This is what they're pushing. I mean, who believes in this nonsense? Urban gardeners used to have no qualms about greening their indoor spaces. For one, this reduces city living anxieties and emotional stress. Also, being able to take care of plants inside their offices and homes could be part of interior design and a slight improvement in air quality. However, climate alarmists are not going to give city dwellers peace of mind. According to the WEF researchers, greening indoor spaces can also come at an environmental cost. This is crazy, right? They cite carbon emissions from the trucks that transport the plants, plastic pots, and synthetic fertilizers. These, they said, are made from petroleum. Oh yeah, and petroleum bad, gas bad, remember, according to them. And the harvesting of soil components like peat can tear up slow-forming habitats. Susan Pell, the director of the U.S. Botanic Garden in Washington, D.C., downplayed the narrative. Pell argues that members of the general public should at least still be able to grow potted plants at home, even if they can't buy them. I agree. That's common sense. They just need to consider the environmental harm of indoor gardening, she claims. There's no harm there. I'm going to be real with you. The news comes amid a growing war against the food supply to supposedly fight global warming. As Slate News reported, 14 major American cities have set a target to comply with the WEF Green Agenda goals by banning meat and dairy products by 2030. Look no further than New York. And they act like these people, there's just a group of business people meeting together. They really have no power or anything like that. Well, if that's the case, how come we have major cities and states complying with that if they have no power? The agreement also seeks to ban private car ownership and place their restrictions on public freedoms to meet the WEF's net zero goal. The U.S. cities have formed a coalition called the C40 Cities. I talked about them before. The C40 Cities Climate Leadership Group, C40, which has established an ambitious target to meet WEF's goal by the year 2030. To fulfill the target, the C40 cities have pledged that their residents will comply with the following list of mandatory rules: 0 kilograms of meat consumption, so no more meat; 0 kilograms of dairy consumption, no more dairy, unless it's created in a lab. Of course, this is why you got like Bill Gates hopping on to these dairy and artificial meat groups or companies. This is why he's buying them up, because he knows what the globalists are trying to do. They're trying to ban meat and they're trying to ban dairy. So for the synthetic stuff. So Bill Gates is looking to make a lot of money behind this. 3 new clothing items per person per year. 0 private vehicles owned. 1 short haul return flight, less than 15 kilometers every 3 years per person. The news comes as WEF ramps up efforts to demand governments crack down on the freedoms of their citizens. That's what it's really about. As Slate News reported earlier this year, WEF members unveiled plans for permanently mass jabbing the public every 6 months. During the WEF's annual meeting in Davos, Switzerland in January, globalists announced plans for biannual mass jabs with long-acting mRNA, stuffs. We can't really get into that here. But the plan is purportedly part of an effort to supposedly tackle multiple diseases. During panel discussions at the meeting in Davos, WEF members laid out plans for tech-driven precision medicine, long-lasting jabs, climate-sensitive jabs, and a whole bunch of therapeutics for non-communicable diseases. And the public is definitely not behind any of that stuff, but they're going to continue to push it because, again, it's about power and control. They don't care anything about the climate. That's not what it's really about. But y'all let me know what y'all think about this. Leave your comments down below. Like, share, and subscribe, and check out jjthepsychotherapist.com for the latest in news. Until next time, peace.